The YouTube is always last, but once the YouTube is up, we know that the internet has decided to give us one more day. Here it comes. Lucy, are you excited? You seem like you're sleeping. Are you that tired? Did you have a good breakfast? All right, let's just make sure the YouTube is healthy and wise. And yes, it is. Oh, how about that? We get another day. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good morrow. Whatever's going on in the time where you're at, I hope it is amazing. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I hope you are staying safe. I hope you are staying home. I hope all your dreams have come true. Like, have you ever had a dream? I hope you've accomplished it like yesterday. I hope that's what you did over the weekend. Hey, how was your weekend? I accomplished my dreams. All of them. Just done. It's off the to-do list. It is May 26th in this quarantine year of our Lord 2020. And we got a special episode today. I'm really excited about my guest today because, as you know, we've been covering the privacy amendment that failed to get through on the Senate. So they're reauthorizing parts of the Patriot Act, because why not? That was a great piece of legislation passed by a bunch of people who didn't read it. But anyway, there was this amendment that said that was a good amendment saying, hey, if you want to get through someone's internet browser history, you need to have a warrant for something like that. You can't just do that all willy-nilly. Unfortunately, it failed in the Senate by one vote. Some senators weren't there, among them Bernie Sanders. So that was very disappointing. That totally should have passed. It didn't. But now, here's the interesting part. It goes back to the House, and the House has the ability, well, specifically, it has to come from the Speaker. So Nancy Pelosi has the ability to tack that amendment back on and then send it back to the Senate, where hopefully it would pass this time. So that's the situation. Now, if anyone ever says to you, hey, is our political system okay? You can say to them, we're counting on Nancy Pelosi to save our privacy on the internet. How do you think it's working out? But I have a guest today. I'm really excited. This is Dayton Young, who is the product director for Fight for the Future, and a brilliant guy. Full disclaimer, you guys know that I've collaborated with Fight for the Future before. I think very highly of the organization, and I've collaborated with Dayton before, and he's nice enough to come on this show and illuminate us to some of the stuff that's going on. What's up, Dayton?
How you doing, Ron? Thanks for having me on the show. Really excited to be here. Great introduction and a great summary of what's going on. The legislative process can be very confusing. It takes a lot of dramatic twists and turns, and so I think you did a really good job telling everybody what's going on and what the lay of the land is.
Well, you guys have really stayed on top of it, and so that's kind of like the nuts and bolts summary of what's going on. So what has unfolded from that? You guys started a petition with saveinternetprivacy.org. I plugged that on the show. I called myself. I called myself, and Dayton, I actually had a full-pronged plan. I called, and I even offered Nancy Pelosi cartons of ice cream to do the right thing. I tried to bribe her. I got her favorite flavor, which is the tears. It's Tears of Poor People. That's her favorite. So I got some of it.
The new Ben & Jerry's flavor? I didn't even realize that came out.
It's a new one. Yeah, it's a new one. It's a quarantine thing they came out with. But yeah, so I got that. And I said, look, I got all the ice cream. Just please do the right thing here. So yeah, you guys set that up. So what is the current state of affairs?
Yeah, we can go into the history of it if you'd like. It gets pretty crazy. The current state of affairs is there is a bill that the House is going to vote on. It's an amendment to the USA Freedom Reauthorization Act of 2020, which is essentially, it is the Patriot Act. It's the USA Patriot Act. And so it's this amendment to the Patriot Act. And what this amendment should do is it should force the government to get a warrant before going to your ISP and saying, hey, what web pages has this guy been visiting? It should prevent the government from going to YouTube and being like, you know what? We want the IP addresses of everybody who's watching this certain video. We don't like this video, and we want to know who's been watching it. So those are things the government probably shouldn't be doing right now, but it's likely that those are the things they are doing that are being justified by the Patriot Act behind closed doors in secret courts and secret things, all this. And they're able to do it without a warrant, and I can explain how that works as well. But this bill, the Lofgren-Davidson Amendment, would just say, hey, you can't do that. If you think somebody's doing something wrong, just go to a judge and get a warrant. Tell them why you think this person is doing something wrong. And if you're right, you'll get a warrant, no problem. And then you can go and spy on the internet activity. But you can't do it without convincing a judge this person might be breaking the law.
And now this new amendment is an amendment that they came up with in the House to kind of mirror the original amendment, which was by, I believe, Wyden and Daines, correct?
Yeah,
over the Senate.
That's what I could have explained it. Yeah, very simple. So it failed. Wyden and Daines, Ron Wyden is the Democratic senator out of Oregon. Steve Daines is a Republican senator out of Montana, I think. And so this was a bipartisan amendment. 59 senators voted in support of it. Usually that passes, usually need 51 votes. Unfortunately, for reasons that I'm not entirely clear on, but I suspect are just to make it more difficult to pass, Mitch McConnell set the voting threshold at 60 votes to pass this. So we got 59 senators who wanted to support it and 37 who didn't, and 4 who didn't show for the vote. And even though it was a big loss and a heartbreak, it inspired people in the House to say, hey, if this can pass the Senate, and it definitely can pass the Senate if we get another shot, then let's pass something very similar in the House and give the Senate another chance to vote on it. So that's what's going on right now, is this new amendment to mirror the old amendment. It's going through the House, back to the Senate, and we'll see where it goes from there.
So was the initial response, because I know like even the Hill has referenced there was a huge public outcry urging Nancy Pelosi in the House to do the right thing here and put back on the amendment. Because look, the House isn't going to just do something because they're like, this is a good thing to do. They need to have a lot of public
pressure. Do you not have faith in our government? Didn't Pelosi get that shipment of ice cream? Like,
I don't even know. I don't know if it arrived yet. I don't know. I guess maybe the fate is depending on that shipment of ice cream. But so how extensive was the pressure? Was there a big response to the website that you guys launched? And
yeah, I think so. It got a lot of hits in press, which is very good. So I think the biggest hit we got, which was fantastic, Vice, Janice Rose, a journalist at Vice, ran an article saying like, hey, these 37 senators voted to let the government spy on your internet activity. This is what happened. And again, with all of this context, the USA Freedom Reauthorization Act of 2020, it replaces the Patriot Act, and this is an amendment, and it's an amendment to do this, and senators voted against it. It all gets very confusing. And so part of what great journalists who cover this information do is they simplify the message and let people know what the result is and how this stuff is going to impact their lives. And the result of that vote is, Congress had an opportunity to stop the government from spying on our internet behavior, and a minority of senators actually said, no, we're not going to let that happen. And so that blew up. That got covered. Vice, Gizmodo, Del Cameron was covering it. People on Reddit, I think it was at the top of Technology. It was on the top of Our Libertarian. It was all over Reddit, and people were outraged. And so that negative press, people driving calls to their senators, our website, driving thousands of calls to Nancy Pelosi's office, to senators, to representatives, driving letters, all that stuff made people in Congress say, oh, this is big. And it inspired people like Lofgren and Davidson to say, okay, this thing has a shot. People are paying attention. Now there's political pressure on opponents of privacy. And now we have the ability to do the right thing. I do believe, we were joking about earlier, I do believe a lot of lawmakers want to do the right thing. We saw 59 senators vote to do the right thing. We saw a minority block them. We see a lot of representatives in the House want to do the right thing. They don't want to reauthorize the Patriot Act. And if they do want to reauthorize it, they want to make sure that it's not like abused to spy on people like us. Oftentimes they have a difficult time voting the way they want to because of political pressure. Leadership has a lot of power over these people. If you don't vote for this, then I'm not going to bring your amendment to the floor when you have something you care about. There's a lot of petty partisan politics like that go on that prevent people from doing what they want to and voting for their conscience. So I think that what that kind of groundswell does when people call the offices, when people post on Reddit, when people get outraged, it gives these politicians political cover to say, hey, this is what the voters care about. This is what the people want. And therefore, I now have the authority to stand up to people in my party or leadership from the other party to say, we're going to do this. And I don't care what you think.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we'll agree to disagree on your optimism about elected officials. I think
it's optimistic, Ron.
I think it's a very, very small number. It's a very, very small number. I mean, I don't disagree with that completely, but I think it is a very small number of people who are motivated by more than self-interest. But, you know, that's a different topic for a different day. So I want to stay on you, you being Fight for the Future, and you were the representative for Fight for the Future, and Demand Progress and the ACLU are currently amidst an Ask Me Anything on Reddit to try to steer the conversation on these issues and tell people what's going on and tell people what they can do. Can you highlight some of this stuff? Because, hey, man, I'm on the West Coast. This is still my AM, Dayton. My day has just gotten started. I know you're out east, so it's your afternoon. So you've already been boots on the ground for this today. So what have people been asking? What are some things that you want to highlight? What are maybe some common questions people have?
Yeah, all those West Coast folks, hop on Reddit, check it out. We've got a few hundred comments, I think, right now. The first comment that came through is one of the most popular comments and questions we often get. Sometimes people are curious. Sometimes they're playing devil's advocate. Sometimes they just really believe this and they say, well, if I'm not doing anything wrong, then why should I care if the government is spying on me? And that was the first question we had. And, I think there's so many different ways to answer that. The most important way to answer it is, that's not the way it works. The government is not like the Constitution protects your right to free speech, your right to privacy. If somebody wants to invade your right, they have to have the evidence to say that, hey, this person's opinion, this person's privacy is threatening the public good. This person is doing something bad. They've got to prove that to a judge to get a warrant before they can start snooping into your activity or telling you what you can and can't say. That burden is on them. So that's the most important thing is, hey, that's the wrong question to ask. The government has to prove that. We should be asking, why does the government want to spy on my stuff? I'm not doing anything wrong. So why do they want to spy on me? That's the question we should be asking. Now, the reason why we have those important amendments in the Constitution to protect your privacy, to protect your freedom of speech, to protect your essential liberties, is because the founders understood that government control can have a chilling effect on free speech, on political activism, on changing laws, on sharing your voice, on running your business, on living your best life. I mean, if I am sick and I'm having some symptoms and I Google on WebMD, what's going on with my terrible cough, if somebody knows that I'm Googling that, they can let my neighbors know, hey, maybe this person has COVID. They can stoke fear. That can come back and haunt me. That can lead to people wanting to kick me out of my apartment complex. It can lead to friends, not wanting to hang out with me, relationships, romantic partners, business partners. That kind of sensitive information can be used in many, many different ways.
Have you been dumped before because of a cough?
I've been dumped for much better reasons.
You're getting really specific here. You're just like, yeah, don't you? You're seeing somebody, then you have a cough, and they're like, we can't do this anymore. That's never happened to me. Has that happened to you?
Usually, there are much better reasons for me to get dumped than the cough. Imagine other sensitive medical situations.
Right.
And Fight for the Future did have somebody close to our organization who wrote about their experience with a COVID-19 infection. And this person was hospitalized. This person, upon returning home, spoke to their property manager and let them know. And the property manager let other people know that somebody in the community, was recovering from this illness. And people were demanding to know who it was. People wanted to know this person's personal information, where they lived. Why did they want to know this? Did they want to harass this person? Did they want to threaten this person? People moved out because they didn't want to be near somebody who had COVID-19. So, I mean, it sounds silly to say, yeah, somebody's going to break up with you for a cough. But these things, it's crazy how some people react to what shouldn't be absolutely terrifying medical information and personal medical information. So I think those protections are really important. and they pop up in ways that I can't even imagine all the ways that people want to abuse my personal information. I'm not that devious. What's up, cat butt?
Oh yeah, Lucy's here.
But
She has so much energy during this quarantine. She's like this is a new. I mean, she's always had a lot of energy, especially for her age. But now, because she gets like unlimited amounts of playtime, she just fly. Like after she eats, I'm pretty sure she can fly now. I've seen her do some amazing things, and I think she flies. I think after she eats, she can just fly around. And I usually feed her right before the show, so she's just kind of like, "It's flying time. Let's do this." And I'm like, "Well, I got to do a show."
I'd be much more if you'd fed me.
There's some ice cream on its way, man. Don't worry. I got
people's tears. Yeah, that's not my.
I just. So let me pull this up because this is the call to action that you guys have. Organizing works after serious grassroots pressure. Speaker Pelosi will allow a vote on the privacy-protected Lofgren-Davidson amendment, which, again, that's just the House version of the initial amendment, and it's pretty much a mirror of that amendment, correct?
Well, we are hoping. I think I'm getting messages about the final text of it. They're working out to see exactly what it's going to say. One of the reasons we need people to be calling Congress right now is to let Pelosi and others in leadership know, hey, you can't water down this bill. There are people who are like, well, okay, we'll do the privacy amendment, but we're going to make sure it doesn't really protect your privacy. We still want to know what YouTube videos you're watching, so we're just going to weaken this little section here. So we need to let these people in Congress know that we are watching, and if you try to screw with this amendment, that we're going to be furious, that we're going to tell people that you screwed up. This is an election year. This is going to come back to haunt you. So we want these lawmakers to know everybody's watching, and they need to do what's right.
So people can go to saveinternetprivacy.org. They can call their reps. They can demand action on this. And, of course, follow Fight for the Future on the Twitter to get all the latest updates. So let's go to something else that has happened in relation to this. So a member of Fight for the Future was sharing the Vice article on Facebook. That's right. Big tech always doing what they can to help the situation. Facebook flagged that article, said it was misinformation.
Partially false. Yeah.
Partially false.
So now anybody seeing that post on our Facebook will be under the impression that we shared partially false information.
So here's the claim. I have the Medium piece. Here's why they said it was partially false. And this isn't the first time that you've heard something like this come from these fact checkers, these quote unquote fact checkers. So this is the Vice article that was shared. They're saying it's partially false. Now, why are they saying it's partially false? Well, because of semantics. So the amendment that didn't go through would have required the FBI to get a warrant before snooping on internet activity like browsing and search history. So the headline said that the Senate voted to allow this to go on. Now, the independent fact checker is saying, well, they technically didn't vote to allow it to go on. They just didn't vote to not allow it to go on. This was already going through. The amendment was to say, hey, you can't do this. That amendment didn't pass. So basically, they were just saying, well, we're not going to bother to not allow this to happen. But it's not like they voted to allow that specifically. Basically, it depends on what your definition of is argument. And, my personal take, one of two things is going on. Either A, this person just had the agenda to claim this was partially false and was going to do the mental gymnastics to do it. Or B, these fact checkers are the types of personalities where unless they say what about or actually 45 times a day, they're unable to orgasm. That is my theory. I'm sticking to it. So what's your take? Why was that?
First of all, somebody like me.
Do you think that article was partially false?
No, that article was completely true. And
I agree.
It's like we described. So there was a vote. The result of the vote is that these senators will allow this behavior to occur. That's completely true. So that's all there is to say about it. Now, I would say it's not even semantics, and this is a semantic argument right here, which is it's equivocation. And equivocation means that you're quibbling with these details to obscure the truth. And that's what's going on here. The truth is these senators, they knew what their vote was going to do. They knew that by voting against the Wyden-Daines amendment, that their vote was allowing the government to most likely continue gathering this information on you, to continue spying on your internet activity. One of the people who voted against that amendment, I believe, was Lindsey Graham. And he is the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee, I believe. And Del Cameron from Gizmodo has a great article up right now that you can check out, where he got a hold of a document that the Senate Intelligence Committee circulated ahead of the vote. And this document says, here's why you shouldn't vote for privacy protections for Americans. Did you read this article? I'll try to summarize it. It's batshit insane. It really is.
I would imagine. I mean, the headline's a bit off-putting. I mean, I gotta say, that's sort of like, oh, here's why we shouldn't. Oh, let me dive into this.
I'm making it up, and I'd say you can't make it up, but somebody clearly made it up. So the hypothetical situation that this Senate Intelligence official memo says is that if we're not allowed to spy on Americans' internet activity, then if a known foreign agent comes to America and the FBI knows he's here in America, and the FBI watches him go to the Hoover Dam and takes pictures of the Hoover Dam, and then he goes and blows up the Hoover Dam, all while the FBI is watching, we couldn't stop him from doing that because we weren't able to go online to get a warrant in time and check his internet history to see if he Googled instructions on how to build a bomb. That's literally what the argument that the Senate Intelligence Committee has made for why we shouldn't vote for Wyden Dane's privacy protections.
Think about the Hoover Dam.
It's ludicrous. It's like, and Senator Wyden, of course, saw this and said, hey, he was very polite, but he said, this is crap. If we know that you are a foreign agent and you are coming to America, we can get a warrant on you. And we don't have to spy on Americans to do that because we have provisions to get warrants on foreign, agents. Like, this has nothing to do with that. It's also, I mean, Ron, if you got to Google how to build a bomb, you probably can't build a bomb that's going to blow up the Hoover Dam. Like, it's just insane. Like,
yeah, you're probably going to do something else dumb to get caught with whatever it was you were planning to do.
I mean, the leaps of logic you have to believe in to take these lies at face value is just insane. It's insane. So all of these folks who are opposing the amendment, they're lying to the public. They're lying to other senators about why they want this and about how it's going to be used. They know that the end result is to spy on Americans. And when they cast their no vote, they cast that no vote to allow this to happen. So for someone to say, oh, they weren't voting for this to happen, they were voting against preventing it from happening more.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Why do you think they did that? Why do you think some fact checker, which I mean, my personal take, and maybe we have a slight difference of opinion, but I think the whole program is absolutely ridiculous. I just think that Facebook and Silicon Valley has no business determining what is and isn't free speech, determining what is and isn't news. Let the public filter it on their own. That's the whole point of an E-Town Square, is it not?
Yeah, I think that Facebook is really off base on this. They sold your personal information.
You're so polite. I like it.
They gave away your personal information to Cambridge Analytica, who then used that to target you with lies. They literally had entrenched workers with the Trump campaign, helping teach them how to target individuals on Facebook with fake news and inaccurate information and lies. And they spread, like Facebook institutionally spread all these lies and fake news that have led to the situation we're in right now. And now that people are upset, they're like, oh, we're going to take this very seriously. And taking this very seriously means we're going to allow one person at USA Today to trump the reporting of another journalist at Vice, as well as the messaging that's coming out from people like myself who are following the issue. things that are coming out from the offices of senators like Ron Wyden. Janice Rose is a journalist. She's talking to all these different people and forming this really intelligent opinion and letting people know what's happening. And what her words are doing is spurring millions of Americans to action, and it's changing the nature of the dialogue in the country, and it's possibly changing the laws to protect us. And we have one person at USA Today who's like, well, they didn't vote to allow it to happen. They voted against preventing it from continuing.
Technically,
seriously,
the whole point of Facebook was to sell our info. That's the whole, from day one, that was, it was an information trove. And they wanted us to just volunteer it, which, we all did. I mean, we all did. But that was the whole purpose of the organization. Like, we're just going to sell your information. So now all of a sudden, they're taking opposition to an article that is supposed to protect our privacy. Gee, wonder why. Who saw that coming?
Who watches The Watchmen?
I actually don't.
Famous quote by Zack Snyder. Yeah. So yeah, it's ludicrous. I personally think that there's, that facts are important. Facts matter. I think facts are very important. There are objective facts that we can verify.
Sure.
And it's important to recognize what those things are. I go on Donald Trump's Twitter every day, and I see lie every single day, lie after lie.
Why would you do that to yourself?
I'm a masochist.
All right.
I decided not to wear my ball gag for this interview. I think it's important to stay informed. It's important to know what lies people are telling. I talked to you about the lies that the Senate Intelligence Committee is telling in the memos. James Clapper, when he was one of the directors of the NSA, he stood before Congress and lied, said that, no, we're not doing the spying under the Patriot Act program. We're actually not doing this. And when we found out that was a lie, he went back to Congress and said, oh, I thought you were talking about the other things that we weren't doing.
So you're saying that sometimes people in the intelligence agency, they don't tell the truth?
Well, if I were a USA Today fact checker, I would say that, it has been alleged that people forget $100 million spying programs that collects bulk data on hundreds of millions of Americans because, that's the kind of thing you forget about when you're in charge of it.
Whoopsie.
So we want to say they lied because we could get fact checked on that. But yeah, I mean, people are lying all the time, and it's important to understand what the lies are. And one of the things we do at Fight for the Future is we call people out for their lies. So I think, theoretically, it's a really good thing. I like journalistic outlets that have fact checkers involved and editors to make sure that you're not saying lies and that people are spreading correct information. But this is a shitty way to go about that. This is a stupid way to go about that. It's a reactionary way to go about that. Facebook is not the correct person or entity to be the gatekeeper of what is true and what is false. They're trying to shift this off onto third parties like USA Today, I imagine, because they don't want to be looked at as an editor themselves, because there's legal issues about what you.
Well, they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to be like, oh, we're an open publishing platform. Oh, but don't worry, we'll rein stuff in that people don't like. It's like, well, no, you can't have your cake and eat it too. But then people, well, they're a private company, so they can. Well, they're also a modern day town square. So we're in a weird place in society. And this is part of the reason why the work from organizations like Fight for the Future, like Demand Progress, why all these digital rights organizations, which I think is like the loose terminology you can apply is digital rights. We're in a weird place in human history where technology has passed up the law. Like we have this technology and the law has just not caught up yet. So we don't know the exact right answers in every, for instance. We're still figuring it out because technology is here and the law is only about here. It's got to catch up and we got to figure out how to do that.
It would also be nice if the law caught up to like in real life as well, because we're still,
That's true. There's other
oppressing millions of people based on their race, gender, sexual identity, all sorts of horrible shit that's going on.
I'm implying it was solid everywhere else. But I'm just saying, like, keeping it digitally.
We have a legal framework in the real world for many of these problems, and even though we don't get many of them right, at least there's a legal framework and a general understanding of like, here's a private business, here's the town square, here's what the sidewalk is, and here's when you can shout on the sidewalk and when you actually have to stop shouting on the sidewalk. And we have pretty good ideas of how that happens. And as we are building a new world on the internet, we are trying to move similar rights, and unfortunately sometimes regulations are necessary to protect those rights online as well. And so that's what this battle is really about, which is, hey, we know the Constitution says that the government can't come into your home and look through your stuff without a warrant. So is this any different than your home? Is your digital content any different than your physical content? And there are some real scary authoritarians who are saying, it's totally different, and we should be able to look at whatever you've been reading, the videos you've been watching, the sites you've been visiting, the questions you've been asking, the people you've been talking to, and we should get all of that because it's online and that's different from in the real world. And, that's bullshit. That's bullshit, Ron.
Yeah, well, is it really? Especially since, the one thing, well, not the one thing, but one thing that this pandemic has really made apparent to people, and this is one of the things that I see as, kind of like one of the silver linings amidst a very difficult situation we all find ourselves in, is people are realizing the internet is a utility in our lives. If we didn't have the internet, what would we be able to do? This is a utility in our lives. There are still so many areas that are underserved that need better access to broadband.
Fans, they all just stopped watching.
Huh?
I said, if you have libertarian fans, they all just stopped watching at the internet as a utility.
Maybe not. Hey, if you're a libertarian, don't you like competition? Don't you like free market? Well, how is it a free market if an organized duopoly gets to dictate our access to the internet? What's free market about that?
Yeah, I have an MBA. I'm like the corporate sellout on the team. I like commerce. I do. I like markets. I tend to think of myself as a ideally I'd like to be a laissez-faire, like pro-free market type of guy. I do think that government has a very strong and important role in society, and that's to create infrastructure. And I think internet is the new highways. It used, back when I was a kid, they called it the information superhighway. And
they still call it that a little bit, don't they?
I think only really old, weird people like me call it.
I think I've used that. No, I think I've used that sort of recently too. I think I say it regularly on this show, so I might need to.
It's so accurate. It's what it is. And, I don't want my highways being, controlled by individuals and organizations. That restricts the flow of free trade. When you have the government creating this infrastructure with pavement that allows people who own private cars to drive their cars and ship their shipments over trucks and freights and other things like from point A to point B, that facilitates the world we live in. It requires government investment in that infrastructure and maintenance in that infrastructure. I see the internet very similarly, and that would be my preferred way to go about organizing it. I've heard some interesting arguments from other people who are intelligent who would like to organize our online infrastructure differently. I'm open to those arguments, but ultimately I think that you create a strong foundation. You create, the government supplies the public square, and then you let the people figure out how they want to interact with each other in that public square. I think the internet's the new public square. I think it's the new highway system. I think it's the backbone, it's the infrastructure. And I think it's a utility. I think everybody needs access to it so that they can participate in discussions. They can be educated. They can watch this YouTube show, which is very, very important. They can take part in the modern digital democracy.
I'm with you, man. I mean, I think we got to build. I mean, I think we need just city-owned internet all across the country. I think that's what. I mean, think about it. Think about it from a road perspective. What's going to give you better roads? If every road was operated by two companies that reported to no one and just wanted to maximize their profits, don't really give a hoot, and if you complain that they're located somewhere else and they don't care, or roads maintained by your community where everybody from every single resident and the mayor is using it, what's going to give you a better road?
Yeah, and some federal highways, because you know what, it's important to connect the roads from the different cities.
Right.
And you know, it's important to have some oversight when some people let their stuff slip. That affects other people in their community, outside their community. So you know, these are really important issues of what's the public good and what isn't. And yeah, I think we're on board. I think we're on the same page here.
So getting back to the theme here, have they confirmed that the vote will take place on Wednesday? Now getting back to this amendment, they're trying to put the amendment back into the House. We're waiting for the final text on it. There's been grumblings on the internet that the vote is going to happen on Wednesday. Has that been confirmed, or is that still?
The answer you're looking for is yes. Then yes.
Okay.
As far as I know, the vote is scheduled to happen tomorrow.
Okay.
I think there are always things that can go wrong. You know, maybe I'm going to get a text in an hour that says, hey, the bill has been gutted and they're voting on it tomorrow. And we'll be like, oh, this is crap. Maybe we'll hear something, hey, you know, in order to hammer out the final pieces of, you know, legislation here, the vote's going to be kicked back till next week. Those things sometimes happen. I'm not really entirely sure. So I don't want to say 100%, but like 99%, it's happening tomorrow.
Okay, so as of right now, and this is unfolding in real time, but as of right now, we're waiting on the final text of the bill. The vote should be happening tomorrow. And in the meantime, to keep up the public pressure, people need to go to saveinternetprivacy.org, call the representatives, demand this amendment and the real amendment be supported, not be watered down, and be pushed through in the House.
If you want to save internet privacy, go to saveinternetprivacy.org. Call, email, tell your lawmakers to save internet privacy. Tell them not to mess around with this other crap. Tell them not to spy on you. Be polite, be direct, but be firm and let them know, hey, I want important privacy protections in the Patriot Act reauthorization.
Dayton, thanks so much for joining me today. Guys, get to it. SaveInternetPrivacy.org. Do the thing. Dayton, thank you for all your work at Fight for the Future. It's an infinitely important piece. And you guys know the drill in the meantime. We'll be back tomorrow. Same time, same channel, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Savage Joy is my guest tomorrow. We'll be getting our news on together. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy says meow. I say peace.